to the Daily Bite. I'm your host, Pastor Steve Andrews.
We continue our study of the book of Joshua with chapter 13. Now Joshua was old and advanced in years, and Yahweh said to him, "You are old and advanced in years, and there remains yet very much land to possess. This is the land that yet remains, all the regions of the Philistines and all those of the Geshurites, from the Shihor, which is east of Egypt, northward to the boundary of Ekron. It is counted as Canaanite. There are 5 rulers of the Philistines, those of Gaza, Ashdod, Ashkelon, Gath, and Ekron, and those of the Avim in the south, all the land of the Canaanites, and Mirah, that belongs to the Sidonians, to Aphek, to the boundary of the Amorites, and the land of the Gebalites, and all Lebanon toward the sunrise, from Baal Gad, below Mount Hermon, to Labo Hamath, all the inhabitants of the hill country, from Lebanon to Mizraphoth Maim, even all the Sidonians. I myself will drive them out from before the people of Israel. Only allot the land to Israel for an inheritance, as I have commanded you. Now therefore divide this land for an inheritance to the 9 tribes, and half the tribe of Manasseh. With the other half of the tribe of Manasseh, the Reubenites and the Gadites received their inheritance, which Moses gave them beyond the Jordan eastward, as Moses the servant of Yahweh gave them, from Aroer, which is on the edge of the valley of the Arnon, and the city that is in the middle of the valley, and all the tableland of Medeba, as far as Dibon, and all the cities of Sihon, king of the Amorites, who reigned in Heshbon, as far as the boundary of the Ammonites, and Gilead in the region of the Geshurites and Maacathites, and all Mount Hermon, and all Bashan to Salekah, and all the kingdom of Og and Bashan, who reigned in Ashtaroth and in Edrei. He alone was left of the remnant of the Rephaim. These Moses had struck and driven out. Yet the people of Israel did not drive out the Geshurites or the Maacathites, but Gesher and Maacath dwell in the midst of Israel to this day. To the tribe of Levi alone Moses gave no inheritance. The offerings by fire to Yahweh God of Israel are their inheritance, as he said to him. And Moses gave an inheritance to the tribe of the people of Reuben according to their clans. So their territory was from Aroer, which is on the edge of the valley of the Arnon, and the city that is in the middle of the valley, and all the tableland by Medeba, with Heshbon and all its cities that are in the tableland, Dibon and Bamoth Baal and Beth Baal Meon, and Jahaz and Kedemoth and Mephath, and Kiriathaim, and Sibmah, and Zareth Shahar on the hill of the valley, and Beth Peor in the slopes of Pisgah, and Beth Jeshemoth, that is, all the cities of the tableland, and all the kingdom of Sihon, king of the Amorites, who reigned in Heshbon, whom Moses defeated with the leaders of Midian, Evi, and Rechem, and Zur, and Hur, and Reba, the princes of Sihon, who lived in the land. Balaam also, the son of Beor, the one who practiced divination, was killed with the sword by the people of Israel among the rest of their slain. And the border of the people of Reuben was the Jordan as a boundary. This was the inheritance of the people of Reuben according to their clans with their cities and villages. Moses gave an inheritance also to the tribe of Gad, to the people of Gad according to their clans. Their territory was Jazer and all the cities of Gilead, and half the land of the Ammonites, to Aroer, which is east of Rabbah, and from Heshbon to Ramath Mizpah, and Betonim, and from Mahanaim to the territory of Debir, and in the valley of Beth Haram, Beth Nimrah, Succoth, Zaphon, the rest of the kingdom of Sihon, king of Heshbon, having the Jordan as a boundary, to the lower end of the sea of Kinnereth, eastward, beyond the Jordan. This is the inheritance of the people of Gad according to their clans with their cities and villages. And Moses gave an inheritance to the half-tribe of Manasseh. It was allotted to the half-tribe of the people of Manasseh according to their clans. Their region extended from Mahanaim through all Bashan, the whole kingdom of Og, king of Bashan, and all their towns of Jair, which are in Bashan 60 cities, and half Gilead, and Ashtaroth, and Edrei, the cities of the kingdom of Og and Bashan. These were allotted to the people of Machir, the son of Manasseh, for the half of the people of Machir, according to their clans. These are the inheritances that Moses distributed in the plains of Moab beyond the Jordan, east of Jericho. But to the tribe of Levi Moses gave no inheritance. Yahweh God of Israel is their inheritance, just as he said to them. This is the word of the Lord. Our text starts out by calling Joshua old. He's old, he's advanced in years, and then Yahweh repeats that message. It's hard to say exactly how old he is. The Lutheran Study Bible will suggest he's 87. We know that he is a chief among his people in Numbers chapter 13 when Moses picks him to be one of the 12 spies that goes up and spies out the promised land. And then you've got the 40 years of the wilderness wandering, and we mentioned a couple chapters ago that it's probably been a good 5 years since then, the long time that Joshua fought against these kings west of the Jordan River. So 87, possibly. I mean, in his 80s seems reasonable here. Which then begs the question, this is always a fun question to talk about with kids. How old is old? Right? How old do your kids think you are? Sometimes is an interesting question, maybe a scary question to ask. But have the conversation around age. And can you imagine leading an army at 80 or 85 years old? A difficult thing here. But the Lord is with him. The Lord told him to not be afraid. The Lord has blessed him in these years. And yet, right, verse 1 still, there remains yet very much land to possess. Now, why that is going to get you into the next book, right? Joshua is nearing the end of his life, and the end of Joshua enters into the period of the Judges. And what you see in Judges chapters 1, 2, and 3 is that the Lord has not delivered all of the promised land into Israel's hand because Israel has not been faithful. They have not done what the Lord gave them to do. They have not been driving out in fullness all the people from the land. We have seen in chapter 9, they made that covenant that they should not have made with the Hivites that lived in Gibeon. We're going to see here in chapter 13 today, and verse 13, that they did not drive out the Geshurites or the Mekathites, but that Geshur and Makath dwell in the midst of Israel to this day. That kind of thing's going to continue, and it is that faithlessness. They've been given to judge people, right? God's judgment is made, and Israel is the tool by which he's going to bring that judgment about, and they have not done it. They have rebelled against God in that way. So not good. Anyway, that's what you'll see in the first few chapters of the book of Judges. This is just pointing us to it at this point. So we get a description in verse 2 already here then of what land still remains. And first and foremost of it's going to be the land of the Philistines. So notice the way we've just described this, chapters 1 through 3 of Judges, that the remaining lands remain as a punishment to Israel's faithlessness. The Philistines are going to be perhaps the biggest enemy of the Israelites, of God's people, as you work your way through the books of Judges and 1 Samuel. So moving forward chronologically for the next 400 years. Right, this is a big deal because Israel didn't do what they were supposed to do. When we sin, there are consequences for our sin. And this would be an example. The Geshurites appear to be a tribe, a group of people further southwest than Philistia. I didn't say that. Philistines would be to the southwest of Israel, on the Mediterranean Sea, before you get to the Sinai Peninsula. The Geshurites are even further out in that direction. 1 Samuel chapter 27, verse 8 is going to reference them, for example. And then we get the 5 major cities of Philistia and their 5 rulers. These, so Gaza, Ashdod, Ashkelon, Gath, and Ekron, these 5 will be mentioned again in 1 Samuel chapter 6. After the ark has been captured, it is taken back to the kings of, the Philistines, and they realize that wherever they put the ark, bad things happen. So they're passing the ark around, and eventually they get so fed up with it that they send it back to Israel. It doesn't make it back all the way to the king because of more fear, but that's a whole other conversation. So the ark is God's throne in the midst of his people, and when it was captured, the Lord punished those who wrongly had his throne. That's a context moving forward. Let's see, what else can we mention out of this section? So the land of the Canaanites, major part of the people, right, that were being driven from the promised land. The Sidonians, so Sidon, Tyre and Sidon are major cities, port cities in the Old Testament on the Mediterranean Sea. They're mentioned in the New Testament as well. To Aphek. Aphek is going to be on the Mediterranean Sea off to the west of the Sea of Kinnereth. In fact, it is where we just mentioned the ark captured. 1 Samuel chapter 4, when the Philistines camped right before the battle that they captured the ark in, Aphek was where the Philistine army stayed. The Gebalites, mentioned in verse 5, are only mentioned here in Scripture. They may have been further to the north, since they're mentioned next to Lebanon there, toward the sunrise, then off to the east as you start moving towards Syria. Mount Hermon, we've mentioned that location before in the book. So we've gone, basically, Israel has taken the center, the stuff closest to the Jordan River and the Sea of Kinnereth to the north and the Salt Sea to the south. But the things pushing beyond that God has promised to Abram, they haven't taken those. So stretching the boundaries is the idea here, which is primarily going to end up happening under King David. Saul will expand the kingdom a little bit, but David will expand it basically to the borders that God describes. And I think it's Genesis chapter 13, or maybe it's 15, where God described the borders that he would give to his people. Misrephoth Thaim is mentioned there in verse 6. That's near Tyre as well. But notice in verse 6, I myself. The emphasis, it's emphatic. God is the one who is going to drive them out. What's Joshua to do as this aged leader of the people? Just allot the land. Just divide it up. Just give it to them, as I have given you to do, right? As I have commanded you, it says in verse 6. So God has already said this is going to happen. He's given the idea of the various inheritances to Moses and Joshua, and he's going to clear the land. He will fight for his people. He will earn this for them. They can't earn it for themselves. A good parallel for us when it comes to our salvation. We can't earn a ticket to paradise. You just can't do it. It's a gift. The Lord has earned it for you. And now we rejoice and we live the life here that he's given us to live, just as he expected the people of Israel to do in this text. All right, so then we have the rest of the text today primarily describing the different regions, the different allotments given to the half-tribe of Manasseh, Reubenites, and Gadites. So these 2.5 tribes on the eastern side of the Jordan River, at the Numbers chapter 32, where they requested that, and this has been granted to them. Now, for this and the next few chapters, really, a map of the 12 tribes of Israel would be helpful. If you have the Lutheran Study Bible, page 365 is where you'll find that. If you don't, just go to your favorite search engine and type in Old Testament map 12 tribes of Israel, and you'll have lots of images that pop up, and many of them are color-coded, so you can even see clearly and distinctly where the boundaries between such groups would be. By and large, those maps are going to be in agreement with each other and helpful. So if you're looking at one of those, it'll help you understand this, because a lot of these places we might not be able to pinpoint ourselves, but the general rough outline can be provided again by looking at a map. Now, I noted earlier the idea of verse 13, that the people of Israel did not drive out everyone that they should have. So that's noteworthy there in that section, that the land may have been more for them, but they didn't follow the Lord's instructions. Verse 14 and verse 33 are going to go together, that Levi got no inheritance among the inheritance of land with the people. Offerings by fire to Yahweh of Israel are their inheritance. Yahweh, God of Israel, is their inheritance. This is from Numbers chapter 18, verses 20 and 21, where God first speaks this to Aaron, that this is going to be what comes for his tribe, his people, as he's the high priest, the chief priest of the tribe of Levi. The picture here is that they will be caring for the Lord's house. They will be the priests who do the sacrifices on behalf of the people, maintaining that Old Testament sacrificial system. And so these priests aren't going to have the land themselves to raise livestock, to grow crops like the rest of the tribes do. Now, eventually we will see certain cities allotted to the Levites, and those cities will be surrounded by land and such. So there's not a fullness to that, but that's the basic principle, the basic idea. If you're the tribe of Gad, your family has an inheritance of land, and it'll be passed down from generation to generation. And you will be farmers, or you'll raise cattle, or whatever it might be. But this is not the case if you're a Levite. Your focus is on the priesthood. Your focus is on the house of God. And so the Lord will provide for them differently. That could be a conversation point for you to have as a family. How did the Lord provide for his priests in the Old Testament? And that would be through offerings by fire, as mentioned in verse 14. The idea of the tithe, that people would bring their tithe to the Lord. The priests would be able to live from that offering of various food. And also the sacrificial offerings, as you see in Leviticus chapters 1 through probably 7. The various parts of those things would be given to the priest who does the sacrifice. So the Lord used those sacrificial systems and the tithe in order to care for the priest. Today, it works similar in your congregation, that you do give a tithe, and that tithe is used in part to care for your priest, for your pastor, whoever it is that speaks God's word to you, because that's his job, right? You have called him to that place. You have asked him to do that work of making sure that forgiveness is always there for you, that you know where you can go to hear the word of God rightly preached and the sacraments rightly administered. And so you've tasked that man with that role. He doesn't have the ability, most of the time, he doesn't have the time then to go out and work in a business or work on a farm. He dedicates his time to the congregation and to the needs of the people of that community. So the tithe is used to provide for him. So that might be a good family conversation today. I'm trying to see if there's any other notes that we really want to talk about with the text in particular. We've talked about so many of these places. I guess I will note in verse 22, Balaam shows up. You might remember Balaam from Numbers chapter 22 through 24. He's not an Israelite. He was from the east, and he was a diviner, which means he did something God said not to do. He attempted to speak to the various gods, and divination is forbidden in the Old Testament. He is invited by the king of Moab to curse God's people. So, let's see. As they're leaving Egypt, the Lord did not take them through Philistia because he knew that they would be afraid. Instead, he seeks to take them down south of the Salt Sea, and then he's going to take them northward, and then they're going to cross the Jordan River to the west. But Moab is one of those people groups that they have to pass through. Moab is on the southeastern side of the Salt Sea, and Moab's king, Balak, knows what's happening and is afraid of the Israelites, afraid that they're going to defeat him and destroy him and his people, and so he hires Balaam, this diviner, to come and to curse the Israelites. If Balaam curses them, then maybe I can overtake them in battle. It's basically his game plan here. And Balaam goes and he entertains the idea of it, and 3 times he speaks to the Lord, and the Lord tells him not to curse them, and instead he ends up speaking blessings over them, that whole situation. So anyway, I'm just bringing that up because here we have Balaam. It's being recorded in the history of Book of God's People here that Balaam is also one of those who was killed as Israel claimed the Promised Land. Or at this point, even the eastern lands as an inheritance, that Balaam is among those judged by the Lord that day. I think that would do it for today. So we have God's judgment. We've seen it in the last few chapters. Now we're starting to move into allotting the promised land, giving it out, as the Lord had promised.